All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to the first exciting episode of campaign doesn't have a name yet because we are going to be doing our session 0 today. Yay!
Welcome to the world of to be determined.
Yes, this is Taba. Taba is a very
Thibodeau.
long-standing tradition.
Thibodeau.
Thibodeau. Who's Thibodeau? No, that's TBD, means to be determined. Yes, I am quoting an old Mighty Ducks movie, but yes, for those of you that are wondering what in the world this is and why everything looks different from what it normally does, welcome to Fabula Ultima. Fabula Ultima is a tabletop RPG. It's been out for a little over a year in English. It's actually created by an Italian gentleman, and so it is primarily written in Italian and then translated. And so it's existed a little bit longer in Italy than it has, or in Italian in general, than it has in English. But it won a couple awards at the Ennies this past Gen Con. I fell in love with it. It's really, really cool. And so as part of my daily December, which hasn't started yet, luckily, I like to try new things and try and stretch myself as a creator in that. And what I started last year, and I'm continuing this year, is I run a little mini campaign so that I can try a system that I probably won't have the ability to run something in again for a very long time. So that's what we're doing today. We are going to be going through our effectively our session 0 for Fabula Ultima. If anyone's watched my YouTube channels on the subject, I am not as big a fan of session 0s as some other people are. It's not. I think they're bad. I think they are a lovely tool to have in your GM toolbox. They are not essential. They really aren't. There are a lot of other ways to create a really awesome, amazing game without having everyone sit down for a session 0. That being said, Fabula Ultima needs a session 0. It's the way that the game is built, and you guys will discover it as we go through here. You may also notice that the overlay that we have, it seems that one of our players is currently sitting in a void. That is because we're unfortunately missing 2 players tonight. Some stuff came up. They won't be able to make it. They may or may not be able to show up as we go. If that happens, you guys get to watch me do a little bit of magic as I have to readjust the entire overlay if and when they show up. Yeah. So the goal is we will eventually have a 5-person team and me. But for today, we are only going to have the 3 people that we see below. And since this is the very first episode of a brand new campaign, why don't we start by just... I know all of us have played together before, but why don't you guys go ahead and just give a brief introduction for anyone that may be either joining us live on twitch.tv/trainerjody, or for anyone that is watching on youtube.com/trainerjody. Let's start with Scott, since you're in my player 1 position. And are muted. There we go.
I am been playing RPG for several years now. Both in 3 kids campaign, but I am Korean. I've played all of the David December games the past 2, now 3 years.
Scott just can't get enough of me, guys. I don't know what to tell you. Cool. Player 2 right now is, I call him Imp. But he has a real name. I will let him decide if he wants to name himself something else.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm usually Imp, although usually sometimes not in a very long time I've gotten Jody to call me Damn It Imp. I'm usually known as on most socials as Imp in my head, Joshua Thomas in real life, and today I may not or may I have other names as well. I'm usually playing in Jody's now both of Jody's uh, bi-weekly D&D campaigns, Traversing the Veil and Legend of the Three Kingdoms. And also, I have also been trying the new systems. Last year, I was a Power Ranger, where he black frogged me, and this
Badgers
year,
are awesome. They're the state animal of Wisconsin,
mhm,
and they're very noble
everybody else,
creatures.
dragon and stag and like yeah, badger.
Badgers are vicious.
Cool. Huh?
Next player, player 3, Dan, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Dan. I've been playing with Jody for several years now. Also in the Tale of Three Kingdoms campaign. I've also done Daily December the last couple of years. I am the aforementioned Yellow Stag. Um, yeah, looking forward to something new.
In my defense, I looked for heraldry animals because that was the whole theme, and badgers are well known in heraldry for being protective creatures. And they're awesome! Alright, so, that being said, oh, and by the way, if anyone, this is your first time showing up because maybe you're searching for Fabula Ultima stuff, my name is Trainer Jody. I have been playing RPGs online for, I believe, over a decade now. I started way back in 4th edition, Dungeons and Dragons. I have been a local coordinator for the D&D Adventures League. I'm a platinum best-selling author on the DM's Guild. I have run multiple multi-year D&D campaigns. I also run, I'm on my second campaign now, working for Zelda Universe, which is one of the largest and oldest Legend of Zelda fan sites on the internet. Yeah, and I also have I've been a YouTuber for over 10 years now. This is my 11th Daily December, I believe. So, yeah, over a decade I have been doing this. Still have very little to show for it, but I got a notification from Google that if I just get my watch time hours up a little bit more, they have created a new tier of almost cool enough to pay that I'm almost at. So, yeah, if I can get a few more people, I think I need like 3,000 hours of watch time on my videos in the past year, and I'm like 2,600 right now. So if anyone wants to watch 400 hours of my videos, that's like 4.
I mean, we got campaigns.
Yeah, so
if you like D&D, we got some D&D campaigns you can catch right up on.
yeah, we've got D&D. We've got the entirety of the campaign last year eventually was called Power Rangers Knights Sentinel. Or Night Sentinel, something like that. I can't remember which one we pluralized. But that was super cool. I do a lot of stuff over there, specifically dealing with, it used to be very D&D focused. Now I'm a little bit broader where I talk about really any RPG that kind of tickles my fancy. And then every so often I talk about business stuff. Because I have a degree in marketing management. That I've never used because I became disabled right before I finished my degree. So, or right after, actually. Yeah. So, that being said, I think it is time for us to delve into the world of Fabula Ultima. I have to get the right thing up. So, Fabula Ultima is a game system that was kind of inspired by old school JRPGs. Things like the Final Fantasy games that came out on the NES and the Super NES. Games like Chrono Trigger. And then other things. They actually have an entire section of their core book. They just list all the things that kind of inspired them. Everything from Miyazaki films to GRPGs and everything in between. And it's a really interesting, unique system that is rooted in the idea of fantasy, but is genre neutral enough that you really can kind of mold the game into whatever you want. And one of the more unique aspects about Fabula Ultima is the fact that not only is there no kind of default campaign setting for it, but part of character creation actually involves building the world that you are planning on inhabiting for your world. And it is not designed for the game master, me, to be the one that builds everything. The world, character creation, how magic works, all of that is meant to be a collaborative process, which is why I mentioned that Fabula Ultima really does need a session 0. Because it's nice to get everyone around a table to start talking about, okay, how do we want to do this world? Because this particular world is only going to exist for a month, I have streamlined a little bit of this. I have some kind of defaults that we are going to deal with in this, and I'm going to take heavy inspiration from the Final Fantasy series, because it is near and dear to my heart. It's some of the first RPGs that I ever played. So, before we get into the world building, these are kind of the limitations that we're going to start with the world. Because we are taking inspiration from Final Fantasy, there are going to be at least 4 elemental crystals that are tied to the well-being of the world. There's going to be a fire, a wind, an earth crystal, and a water crystal. Now, how they interact with the world, where they exist, all of that will be decided how we do this, or while we kind of build the world. And then magic and technology are basically going to be kind of 2 different paths to get to the same result. There are going to be some groups and some people that are very good at harnessing magic, and there are going to be some groups that are very good at harnessing technology. And so that kind of dichotomy, the idea between, what's better, magic or technology, will be kind of a theme as we go through this. Beyond that, we're going to decide everything else. One of the nice things about Fabula Ultima, I'm going to... Where are you? If I do that... So, for anyone watching right now, you guys can now see our lovely Roll20 board. And what I'm going to do is you guys actually have a choice of what you want the world map to look like. Will you let me? So this is our first choice. So this could be what our map looks like. Or we can have this map. 1 or 2. 1, 2. Sorry, I was making an optometrist joke. So, as far as the 2 maps that you guys have seen, is either one of them looking more or less what you would like this world to look like? We're on world map 2. I'll go back to 1 real quick so you guys can see it. Do you guys like either one better? Does it matter to you? Obviously, this one, we basically have 2 larger continents. We have this one here, and then a couple smaller ones, and then a little island there. Whereas if we go to world map 2, this is a little bit more of, we have 1 real big continent, 2 kind of smaller ones, and then we have that kind of island in the center of the world effectively, and then some smaller kind of stuff along the side. So, your guys' thoughts?
I don't like it in this one.
Okay.
I will take you one.
Okay. So we got to vote for one each. Dan, do you have a preference?
It's not a strong preference, but I do kind of like one a little bit more.
Cool. Not a problem at all.
Sorry.
So this is going to be our world map. Now, something that is kind of a major mechanic in Fabula Ultima is travel days. And what that means is as you guys move to different spots on the map, it's the reason we are starting with a world map. I actually have to make rolls to see if you guys are going to run into some trouble or if you guys are going to find something unexpected and good for you. And basically for every day that we travel, there is a roll. So as we kind of build out the map and everything like that, we're going to want to kind of decide how large it is. So I'd like you guys to keep that in the back of your mind, because the way that it makes sense to me the most is we're going to start off by deciding on some nations, and we're going to put some markers that I've actually gone and purchased marketplace stuff in the Roll20 market to fit with the theme and to make everything look like it's 8-bit. So we're going to kind of place the cities that we create right now in the places that we think it would make the most sense. And then once we do that, we can start going, okay, well, how long do you think it should take to travel from this city to that city? And that will kind of give us our one travel day marker, if that makes sense. What I'm planning on doing is we have this lovely measuring tool. And so what I'm planning on doing is either having a day be a square, so basically 5 feet, or maybe even a day being every foot you travel on the map is going to be a day's worth of travel. So like that would be 7 days worth of travel, things like that. And we can modify the actual size and everything like that to make it fit better, but I think using the measuring tool already in Roll20 would probably be the easiest way to do this. Also, I want music. And since I don't have permission for that just yet, let's do this. This is probably... There. Now we have at least some background noise. There is a very cool soundtrack for Fabula Ultima that I've purchased. And I'm just waiting to hear back from the composer to ensure they're okay with me using it in my streams. Because I don't want to... I forgot if I scroll, it changes what people can see. I don't want to... I definitely don't want to upset a composer. So... I just realized I need to modify some stuff so I can actually see what's going on. How do I want to do this? Probably the easiest is going to be just doing that. So now I can see chat. Good. Okay. Sorry. Talking to myself keeps me insane. I've got like 7 different things open right now. It's annoying. All right. So, let's start off with, as I mentioned before, there are going to be 4 elemental crystals, which just to show you, because I want to show off the cool stuff that I found. just to show you some of the cool stuff. Where did you go? I have cool things that I can use, don't I? I swear I prepped all of this, guys. There we go. Okay, so we're going to have 4 elemental crystals. And they float. Isn't that cool?
That is very cool.
I didn't know they had animated tokens on Roll20, so
Oh yeah.
yeah, I have been deep diving into all the cool stuff that exists on Roll20. So
Yeah, they have like chibi animated avatar tokens.
oh yeah, I have seen. So, let's start off with let's place, because the crystals are going to be physical things in our world, and we're going to say we have a fire crystal, a wind crystal, a water crystal. I don't have a better color for Earth, do I?
See, I would have imagined the Earth would have been green.
Yeah, I don't have a green is the problem. Is that a green?
That's not green? It looks like green to me.
Which one?
Yeah, that
This one-
green.
The wind one.
The wind one is green? Cool. What
looks
does
like
this
green to
one
me.
look? I have,
It looks kind of like a
That's
teal.
green.
That could be wind.
so I have I have a blue light filter that I have on all of my screens. So,
See,
any
I'm zoomed
blues?
in. I'm zoomed in. This looks like green to me. This looks like teal.
Okay. So for right now, this is going to be, let's call this one Earth. This one will be wind. This one is water. And this one is fire. So what I need from you guys is, where do we want to put them on the map? Where does it make the most sense that these crystals would exist on the map? And since we have 3 players, I will let each one of you kind of pick a crystal, and you can kind of choose where it goes, and then we'll talk about what putting it there means. So let's start off with player 1 here. Scott, which crystal would you like?
Ooh, I will do fire,
All right, where you want to put it?
and I will put it. We'll put it here.
Down there. Okay. So you're going to put it down here. And do you want it kind of in the center of the landmass? Do you want it towards one of the edges?
For the northeast coast,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm going to shrink this down a bit to make it easier for us.
Yeah.
So there. We have the fire crystal. It's going to be there. So, this whole kind of continent here is going to have access to basically an unlimited amount of heat and fire. So what, and this can be everybody, what do you guys kind of see as having access to this unlimited amount of heat and fire? What do you guys see that as kind of changing how the culture evolved in that area? We could go the route of like kind of Avatar Fire Nation, where they use it to basically advanced metallurgy really high. We could go more the kind of Ashanti Critical Role path, where they're basically just a bunch of kind of fire worshippers and are very in tune with the more kind of wild sides of nature. There's a lot, like fire can do so many different things, so we don't have to be limited in it, but I do want the crystal to be a kind of major part of each society that it's near.
I mean, I kind of see it that way. Maybe it does Cleo uses fire power. Wait.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a route we can go with the idea of magic, because in this world, I'm thinking magic is going to be kind of sourced from the crystals. So with the idea of magic and technology kind of being opposites, it could be that maybe there's something in the soil or something there that the people there grew up with just an inability to use magic, and because they had access to all of this magical energy, it's basically useless to them. They effectively found other ways to utilize it, and their method was, we're going to make technology. Does that sound cool? Cool. So with that, let's choose a capital city for this. And we've already mentioned they're going to be kind of industrial. So what do you envision as the capital city? Again, it's highly industrialized. Do you see the capital city more along the lines of like Coruscant style thing, where it's kind of a very democratized society, or do you see it more along the line of like the Gestalt Empire from Final Fantasy VI, where it's the industry also goes hand in hand with the military, and it's very dictatorial, very controlled? See, I got the good questions. And again,
I would probably say more the latter.
okay.
Yeah, I would kind of pick me to the safety New York or to the safety London. Kind of feel.
Kind of that steampunk,
Yeah.
early industrial age. Okay, cool. For that, I am thinking. And where do you think on the map this city would exist? Do you think it'd be right next to the crystal? Do you think, again, because the crystal itself is kind of pure magic, and they're not technically using the crystal, they're using the after effects of just the world around it being very heavily loaded with magic. So would you see the capital city being close to the crystal, further away, more central for a defensive standpoint, or like on one of the edges around here to make it easier for them to kind of go out and expand their influence?
Probably close to the crystal,
Okay.
I think this water is easily is an area that they could easily defend. Either they had to.
Makes sense.
I imagine, yeah, if there's any kind of an influence there, like if that is in any way a product of their power station, they might we want to keep an eye on it.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah, exactly.
What's going on over there? We good? We good? Okay.
All right. And then in the back of all your guys' minds, think of what you might want to call the capital city of this nation. We're not going to pick the name right now. We're going to move on to the next one. But in the back of your mind, just kind of that idea of what do we think we're going to call this? So it's an industrialized nation, a little bit more towards the monarch dictatorial style than is going to be a democracy. And I think as far as like where this nation has control, because we already have a really simple kind of barrier for where the nation ends, I think this entire little continent here is going to all be under the control of
Yeah.
this kind of fire empire.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to turn the music down just ever so slightly because it's a little bit louder than I'd like.
And I will probably imagine some of these little islands
Mm-hmm.
will probably fall under there too.
Yeah. Well, and that might be something that we to talk about. I like the idea, especially if we have a kind of larger country up here, or if this continent is divided by two separate countries. The idea of islands and stuff like this is always going to be kind of up for debate as to who officially has control over these islands, or whether they're their own city-state. That could be that too. So yeah, moving on. Imp, you're up next. Do you want? We've got earth, wind, or water.
I usually prefer Earth. I just imagine the Earth going somewhere on this continent.
Makes sense. Do you have a specific spot that you think it might be most
I think
evident?
it'd pretty much be just going for dead center. Here's from the source
Okay.
of going all out.
So
I can just see it.
So Earth can, as far as Earth as an elemental force, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of, you can kind of describe the powers of just a really strong Earth crystal. And as far as how it would affect the world, one of the more common ways that it tends to show up is the idea of just fertility in general in the land.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay. So the other way I was thinking is just more of kind of
I'm sure there's some areas that are very bossing, but I was thinking more along the lines of verdant.
Verdant, cool. I'm good with that. That being said, I think with how large this landmass is, it is most definitely the largest of the continents that we have here. I think it would be really interesting that the closer you are to the crystal, the more verdant and lush things are. And once you start getting to kind of the edges, like way down here and way over here, that the land itself might actually have kind of an extreme lack of fertility and verdantness, where you start having like up in the north here, you could have polar deserts, just because that's how snow and longitude works. And then down here, I could definitely see us having actual deserts and kind of things like that. Just again, to kind of create some conflict.
Yeah.
So that being said, let's think about a society kind of built around this idea of not just very fertile, verdant lands, but the magic that makes them having access to it. What do you kind of see for the society that kind of lives around here?
My vibe is if you're tied more in any way to Earth, you might just as easily be. I see it more if you're tied. You're getting. I think more fantastical origin rootedness.
Kind of more along the lines of maybe solar punk style
enchantments,
or even going as far as Miyazaki style, Totoro style things, where everything is kind of built into nature in of itself, kind of thing. Is that what you're thinking, or more along the lines of what you would see more in a traditional fantasy elven society, where there lots of magic showing off, but very kind of rooted in nature as well?
I was thinking more somewhat more like the elven tradition, so to speak. Not to say there's not like technology of some type, but like more focused on the enchantment side than the technological side
Okay.
of
Leaning
activity.
very, very heavily into the magic aspect, which would be an interesting juxtapose with the fact that one of their closest neighbors across this sea here is hyper industrialized, and they've probably had some conflicts over that.
Like, no, yeah, we're good. You can keep your industry and smog over there. We're fine. We're good.
So, where do you think their capital city would?
I actually envision like where this is right here.
Mhm.
It is so lush and so verdant. Maybe it might not be so easy, and so like maybe they actually out of necessity have to be like somewhere like maybe like a little bit of more manageable environment would be like yeah like around like there
Yeah.
because it is so verdant and lush at the center
Mhm.
of this crystal. There's so
I
much.
kind of like that idea of the area around because in the hyper industrialized city society, they live close to the crystal because they need to protect it. I think I kind of like the idea that uh, they live far
Mountains and
away
forest and earth and all that is just like it's
and they
more concentrated the closer you get to it.
and they don't feel the need to protect the crystal simply because around the crystal there is so much wildlife and things like that that they don't have to protect it. I kind of again, I love having cultures that kind of bump up against each other, have vastly different ideas about how they kind of interact with the world and what they value. So I think that would be kind of cool. So I'm even going to go as far as to do do do. How are we to do this? Here we go. So, just to use some more icons that I have. Shrink you down a little bit. Oh, and I can make you bigger or smaller. So move you there. And all I'm going to do is around it, we have this massive forest. So that everybody knows you don't mess with the area around the crystal. Really? Come on. Here we go. Have you stretch down. There. So, we have this kind of center area around the crystal that is just so kind of hyper verdant that nobody goes there because it's just too dangerous. I like that. It's kind of a magic forest where the earth crystal remains. Cool! Moving on. Dan, you want water or do you want wind?
I was thinking water, but I think I'm gonna flip. I'm gonna go wind.
Cool. Where would you like the wind crystal to exist?
Uh, Maybe somewhere around here.
Okay. Now, wind can be utilized a lot of different ways. Obviously, you can go the route of windmills have been used since prehistory as a way to automate things like I think a lot of people forget the idea that the reason it's called a windmill is because the original purpose of a windmill is it literally powered an automatic milling stone, and you used it to grind grain down into flour and other things like that. Like that's what we think of windmill now. We think of it makes power. But if you understand how to kind of harness the wind, there's a lot of different things that you can do with it. On the other hand, with the idea of magic. It could also be something like another thing that is used by wind power a lot is traveling on water. Sailing and things like that requires harnessing the wind. So what do you think about kind of the society that kind of grew up around the wind crystal and this kind of magical, limitless source of wind power that was controllable?
I'm kind of thinking, because wind is controllable, wind is also fluid,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Yeah, do you
I
control the wind or do you work with it?
I think it's a bit of both. I think the culture here is very much into is all about seems odd since they're not water, but fluidity
Makes sense.
and following a flow. So where the wind takes you, right? I don't know that they would be they
Adaptive.
might adaptive. So to your point about windmills, I think they would definitely be using mechanical. They'd use technology and science, but I think they would also have a place for magic,
Okay.
and they wouldn't necessarily try to divide the two.
Right. So
Um,
if we look at the cultures that we've already kind of established, we have the hyper technology fire empire, and then we have the hyper magical earth empire. And so wind is going to kind of be the happy medium between the two, where they kind of combine magic and technology. Effectively, we're talking about the Magitech people. Is that what I'm kind of getting
I'm
from this?
I'm thinking so. I'm also thinking, um, because we talked about like travel. I
Mm-hmm.
think they'd be very like
Oh, we got to have airships.
culturally airships. These would be the people who would like explore and try to learn from other people
Well, what about
and try to travel around and basically have the forest elves be like, No,
well, what about
you can move our goods, but
going even further than that? Because you mentioned that they probably wouldn't be tied down to the too often. What if their cities themselves are mobile? Very much. I'm trying to think. Gulliver's Travelers. It's not Lilliput, is it? The Flying City?
No, that's the tiny people.
That's the tiny people.
yeah.
Anyway, whatever the Flying City was, what if that's how this kind of Wind Nation operates? Is they build
Kind of similar. Laputa.
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 There we go.
Laputa.
Yeah,
Laputa.
yeah. So,
Flying island.
yeah. What if one of the ways that they kind of harness the wind is they basically made these kind of flying cities, and they started basically just with kind of airships and stuff like that, and eventually a few turned into flotillas, and now they have a few kind of flying cities that generally kind of move around here. They can't go super far away, like the cities themselves can't go super far away from the wind crystal, because you start losing the massive amount of wind power you need to keep them afloat. But
Right.
What if, and I'll throw this out there, what, because like, again, adaptive and fluidity, what if the wind crystal is incredibly high up above the land and it moves? And so that dictates the rise and fall of the cities.
Hmm.
kind of
I like
like
that.
wind tides, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
I like it. I think it's cool. Sorry, I am currently looking for something that to me looks like a flying city. So let's go with this. It's not a flying city, but it's kinda. So that's what we're gonna do. So
I mean, it would make sense that they would be constructed, and there would be supports to hold them.
mhm.
So that way, when the wind dies,
Yeah,
because
the
that can
cities
happen.
can land, they just don't tend to.
Right.
And only during this kind of low tide style thing do they ever need to kind of set down. So, where would you say the largest city? Because again, the city moves, but it's going to have like an area that it tends to be around. Where would you say on this continent you think that it would be? Would you think it'd be close to the wind crystal? Do you think it'd be closer to one of the edges?
I I'm kind of thinking like around in this area,
Okay.
maybe. Like somewhere where it would be easily accessible
Mm-hmm.
for trade and yeah.
What we're going to do, because we can, is we're going to make an area that exists in. Really? Are you not going to let me? I'm only allowed to draw it. I'm not allowed to move it? That's not how it works. Move, please. There we go. All right, so we'll move that back in a second, but we can kind of move this. Do you not let me move?
Hmm.
All right, we'll play around with that, but where, like, how far do you think it travels?
I mean, I'm thinking that is probably closer to its western edge,
Okay.
and it might move just a little bit closer to the wind crystal.
Let's move around that.
Yep.
Okay. And we're not going to put it dead center because that'll make it look weird. We're going to put it here. And basically, the city can be found somewhere in here. And that's going to kind of be very typical of this Wind Nation cities, is when you see maps of them, they're always going to have these kind of areas where it's like, yes, the city is somewhere around there. And then the other thing, since you mentioned it being high above the ground, I kind of like the idea of it being at the top of a mountain.
I was thinking, like, so do we not think the crystal moves around?
Well, so when you said it moves, I would like the crystal to have a specific location. Like all the crystals
okay.
need to have a specific location. When you
Okay.
said move, I kind of more envisioned it.
Just up and down.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if this mountain is obviously, if you can see the size of this, if we just make the mountain itself, all right, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna delete the crystal for right now because stacking is not working for me. If we say the crystal basically moves all around this, do I have like a mountain range? Because that would be cool if there was like an entire mountain range that it kind of travels
Mountains.
around.
Is there a plural thing that shows?
I'm looking. Trees, town.
I'm
Here's
almost wondering
mountains. They
if
don't-
near the mountain there are small islands that will move around the crystal.
I kind of like that. So we're going to say that those are the mountains, because that is literally the only mountain I have in the 2 packs that I purchased that were relatively cheap, because I don't have real money. And then, was this the one that we use? Yeah, I think this is the one that was the wind crystal, right?
Yep.
Cool. So the wind crystal is just going to be on top. And small. So we'll put the wind crystal there. So yeah, the wind crystal kind of rises and lowers and kind of moves around this entire mountainous region. As far as like the society, is this another one where, again, because of not only the fact that it moves around, but because the winds are so strong here and it's a lot of mountains, they don't feel the need to really kind of protect it too much because even getting to it is remarkably dangerous? Or do you think they would actually have maybe like dragoons or something that kind of live in the mountains and act as protectors of the crystals? or crystal?
Maybe just like watchers or wardens.
Mm-hmm.
There might be. Um, I would think of them more as watchers.
Okay.
Because I think this society is like I said, they're very open. They're not quite as guarded. Um, so they're very like welcoming to foreign travelers, welcoming of ideas. So I don't know that they would necessarily believe that they need to protect the crystal. Um, but I do think they would want to be aware of it, um, to be able to like monitor it and try to predict, um, you know, if there are any cycles or you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, what am I thinking of? Yeah, like weather forecasters almost. But I kind of like the idea, of the laughable idea of, they try to predict it and try to match it, but their predictions every now and then it's just wildly wrong.
Cool. All right. So we've got one crystal left. Because I have run out of players, I'm going to take the lead on this. I'm going to say the water crystal is over here, amid these islands. And it is actually physically underwater.
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of these islands are part of this water empire. And they claim most of the coastland of this until they start getting close to the fire empire here. And so like the back of the coastline, but this kind of area around here is still kind of contested. And they generally don't move too far away from the water, because that is where their power comes from. They are, instead of being like sailing, I kind of like the idea that they use submersibles and other forms, because they can literally control currents and things like that.
I was gonna say, because this right up here, this is just what we see.
Yeah.
Right. I like that.
Yeah.
And they are going to have.
Oh, you know, I'm getting the vibe. I'm getting a vibe of Bioshock.
Hey.
Kinda.
So
They
like
do- Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so the air crystal, they're like all open and trading, and the water people are just the exact opposite.
Absolutely. They're highly secretive. They, again, they have magic that they use it very similar to the wind crystal people, where they kind of hybridize magic and technology. But they're extremely secretive about everything that they do, because the majority of their society lives underwater. They do have settlements on basically anything with a beach. They've effectively settled around here, and they do have one kind of major city above the waves, which is this blue thing right there, and that is treated as their capital city as far as foreign dignitaries and negotiations and things like that. That is what is considered their capital city. However, the real capital city.
This is what we have to present, so when we are forced to deal with the rest of you.
Yeah. And
They're like, but the after party, that's where the really cool thing is.
oh yeah. So, that is the basics of the world. Now, there's going to be more stuff that shows up on this map as we play. It's one of the other things that is meant to happen. Some of those travel days things that we've mentioned. If you roll, low, you get what's called a discovery. And a discovery is basically something, you guys find something good. It could be, oh, you found a traveling merchant and they're going to sell you some special stuff. Or it could be that you find a ruin that has really interesting things inside of it that you guys can go exploring for. Or maybe you discover notes that talk about a lost civilization or something. So as we play and as you guys travel, we're going to put more bits on the map. And as you guys create your characters, we may also put more things on the map just based on one of the aspects of your character is your origin. Basically, it's your home city or wherever you come from. And so, while this is the basis of the map, it will change as we go.
Very also because you literally just said that maybe I want to go back to your water nation now because I'm thinking like it just makes me think what holds more secrets than the ocean.
I'm going to put those all on the map layer. Cool. So, that being said, let's talk about history. One of the things they're supposed to do is major historical events that have happened that have kind of shaped the world. So I'd like each of you guys to think about either, or to make this a little easier, pick a nation that you didn't found effectively. And let's come up with one historical event that would have shaped that nation. To give you guys some examples of historical events. Things like the death of an important figure, a legendary monster appears, the world is plunged into darkness, a new religion started spreading, visitors from another world showed up, the moon was destroyed. Let's start, because we started with Scott last time, let's start with Imp this time. First of all, where would you like this historical event to affect most? Could be one of the nations we've ever talked about, could be some of the places that we haven't really defined yet. Where do you want to start?
Let's see here.
The only limitation is it can't be the Earth realm.
Yeah. I'm thinking. See, something else just popped in my mind. It's not related to anything, so I want to. Okay, so let's go with wind.
Cool. So, what historical event happened that kind of shaped how the world works?
How the world works, or how the nation works?
Either. We're creating the history of this world. So, in the same way that, like in the Forgotten Realms, the time of troubles.
Yeah. So the idea in my head. So Por qué no los dos? Uh, very long time ago. It's known as the Titan's Tear, and that's when it fell to Earth.
So a meteor, something fell to the Earth. And where'd the meteor come from? Part of the moon? Was it a magical construct? Was it a punishment for playing with fire?
I think it was a great light. A great starlight came down, like somewhere like here.
Okay. And do you see it as a destructive force? It came down, crater and stuff like that? Do you see as it just kind of hung out there for a while?
I think it came, like, when people saw it, they probably thought the world was ending, and then no damage. There was no harm. It was a great light for X number of days. Let's say, I don't want to go with 7. Let's go with 5.
Okay. So it didn't cause any lasting damage, but it did leave a mark on the world. And what was that mark? What changed when the light was there?
It never gets entirely dark there. Even at the dead of night and anywhere else, the ambient light's a little bit more increased.
Okay. So because of that, how did that part of the world change? It basically doesn't have night anymore. What do you see
Yeah, like Twilight is the darkest it might possibly ever get. And
So
if then,
how do you see that changing? Because again, um, we want we want something that affected
yeah,
history. So what did that change how the wildlife in the area lives? Did it make them more aggressive? Did it make them less aggressive? Are there no wildlife there at all anymore? And it is completely plant life. Did all plant life there disappear and it is entirely populated by bioforms? Is it a place that basically became kind of taboo to go anywhere near it, and so nobody knows anything about it? It's kind of this vast, unexplored place. What do you think?
I think the land. I don't like again because it didn't cause any damage per se, but it did definitely affect the area. I think it definitely.
I, I
Perhaps maybe it made it more like we. It's not necessarily verboten, but people are a little bit more wary to go there.
I kind of like the idea, especially since this is a historical event. So we're talking about
Yeah, yeah,
centuries earlier. I think I kind of like the idea that since that area happened, because like for a while people tried to study it, and um, fun fact, um, if your body doesn't go through periods of darkness, bad things
stadium. Yeah,
happen to your brain. Your body's just not designed to work that way. It needs a day-night cycle. So I kind of like the idea that people tried to explore it because it doesn't have night. People that explore it there basically had like nervous breakdowns eventually. And early agrarian societies, they see things like that. They think curses, they think. And so it's not that it's forbidden. It's just nobody goes there anymore because they have discovered a direct correlation between spending long times there and having complete breakdowns. And so much of this area is mostly unexplored. How does that kind of fit with what you
yeah.
like? And so if we do decide to go in there, that will be
You
something that.
can go there, but you might have to take some strange precaution in order so
Mhm.
you can.
Well, and it would be an entire area that nobody has any idea about. Basically, kind of a lost civilization style thing. So, always nice to have a little area where just, yeah, we know nothing about it. So, explore. Cool. I like that. I think it's cool. Let's give it a name. Let's call it. Uh, trying to think of something that would.
Yep, they is here.
Yeah, I've heard they call it the Titans tier.
Titan's tier. Oh, yeah.
I know that's what you want to call the area or not, just the event.
Oh, yeah. No,
Titan.
let's. That'll be. Titans 2 will be the
Twilight.
name of the event. But let's
Oh.
call it the Waking Lands. Because you can't sleep there.
Oh,
So the Titans tier was the catalyst that created the Waking Lands. I like that. I think that's cool. Dan, where do you want to? What historical event do you want to create?
I'm thinking. So the reason the Fire Nation has ended up in its current state, they used to use magic, and then there was a war between them and the Water Nation, and uh, somehow during
Legally
that
distinct.
thank you. Sorry, the Nation of Fire versus the Nation of Water.
The Fire Empire and the Water Conglomerate.
But basically, near the end of that war, they lost. They started losing the ability to use the magic,
Okay.
and there are all these theories about why, including that like somehow the water people um, either used some kind of magical curse or did something to the fire crystal that broke their ability to harness the magic.
So
And
there's
so,
some animosity between the water crystal people and the fire crystal.
and
I
so
like
there
it.
there are fewer and fewer people that have the ability to use the fire magic, and it's not that they're not interested in the fire magic. It's that they all they can do is extract the power. They can't harness or control it any longer.
I like it.
And nobody
So
knows. Yeah.
the final battle in this war, where did it happen? Was it on Fire Nation or Fire Empire lands? Was it at sea? Where do you see it happening?
I I like the idea of it being on Fire Empire lands.
Okay. Do you want it to have been actually at the crystal?
Um,
Maybe a baby.
n-
That would be why the capital is.
Oh, that's why the capital's where it is now.
Yeah, maybe the capital didn't
yeah,
used to be there, and they effectively
That's the
moved the
new
capital
capital.
there. Okay.
yeah.
So,
I also like the idea of the water people were were pressing this war. They had driven it. They were just about to win, and then this final battle happens, and they just swim away. They just
so they also saw something. They're like, no, 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 no.
Yeah, because
or
I was very entertained with the thought of what if they didn't have anything to do with it, but they went with it. They never confirmed nor denied because they're secretive.
right. Was it something they did, or was it something the Fire Empire did? Like a last ditch effort, they were going to win, but then it backfired. Or
So,
they were driven against the wall trying to do something extreme and it failed.
all right. I'm going to turn on my default for a second here so I can get closer to actually fudge this. Really? I don't want you to do that. Stop. There. So we're going to delete that. So what I'm thinking, and people that can, I will turn the map on in just a moment once I'm finished futzing with this to make the markers work the way I want them to.
And the Fire Nation would have won if they hadn't suddenly lost the ability.
Mm-hmm.
They kept getting backed into because the water peeps would just dive underwater, and so you know if a battle wasn't going well for them, they could just submerge,
Yeah.
get away. Um,
I like this. So, what I'm going to put in, the reason I was futzing with stuff, as part of that final battle, the last big effort of them being able to control fire involved them casting a fire spell so powerful that it left this massive, not just crater, but this massive obsidian desert. So the desert itself, it's not just a desert, it is a desert of volcanic glass. So they effectively glassed an entire, everything around the fire crystal has been glassed. And so we're going to label that.
Well, so now I'm wondering, was the Water Nation responsible, or did the Fire Nation fuck up?
When I think both nations blame the other one
Yeah.
Yeah.
for what happened, I think that's the thing that makes the most sense.
and in reality,
So they just call the area the Obsidian Desert. And it's actually one of the ways that the fire crystal's protected, because obsidian in and of itself, if I'm thinking the right word, right? Obsidian is volcanic glass, right?
Yeah, glass.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So obsidian in and of itself is not a particularly strong thing, just like any other glass. It's not particularly strong. And so a single person kind of walking around is going to have trouble because every so often bits of the desert will break under them. But if you try moving troops or anything through it, you are going to change a glass desert into a desert of sharp objects.
Well, also, you don't want that shit in your lungs.
Yeah, lots of
Yeah.
bad things happen. So we have the Obsidian Desert there, which is the final, the lasting reminder of the final battle of, let's call it the Steam Wars, because
That would be-
fire and water makes steam.
Ooh.
I like it.
Cool. All right, let's go back to Scott. What event would you like that shaped the history of the world?
I couldn't think of purple.
Okay.
And I couldn't say that a long time ago there was a dark wizard, a dark maze that kind of blow off from the society, and he, if they started some kind of rebellion or something, and when they said, put down the rebellion, he could pull it away.
Okay. Cool. Let's just talk about motivation for this wizard.
Alright.
Obviously, he was a dark wizard, so he's dealing with stuff he probably didn't. But that's one person, and that's a thing for personal power. What was it that drove other people to rebel with him? Was there a corruption in kind of the government around it that people were being upset by? Did he promise them power, life, something like how do you see him basically creating a rebellion?
I think he was, yeah, I think the government would maybe, let's say,
What about indifference? What about kind of an idea where the government itself, again, if you live in a world where everything is verdant, and we could probably say that hunger is probably not a huge problem for this Earth country, because they probably grow such an abundance of food that they're able to export it out and things like
Yeah.
that. So what if the kind of ruling class basically became kind of an aristocracy style thing, where they became so out of touch, the very magical, basically the more magic you have, the higher your place in society. And so for low magic people that were working the ground and everything like that, they just weren't being thought about very much. You know, once you get to the point where you can just conjure things out of thin air, you often don't think about the fact that not everything is done that way. And so maybe this guy started off as in this kind of lower tier, maybe got into the dark magic because he wasn't able to kind of harness the nature magic. And then he just found other people that felt like they had been forgotten by the aristocracy, and went, hey, maybe we should take what they have. You know, they don't care about us. Why do we care about them? And that's where the rebellion came from.
Yeah, I like that.
All right. So, what do you think the result of the rebellion was on the aristocracy? Did they go full on Hunger Games and punish the populace for rebelling? Did they see what happened and realize that they needed to change?
Oh, I think, I think they full on the popular.
Okay. So if we're going to go punishment, I like the idea of a prison. I actually don't like the idea of prisons in general. They're remarkably ineffective at a lot of different things. However, as a story mechanism, so let's say that
What if we made the prison island?
ooh, we could.
Or was it these islands a prison island?
Oh, it'd be cold.
Yeah, I think I like in the north a little bit, but better.
Yeah.
Because again, that gets them away from.
You whipped that out too. That was real quick. You were able to pull it.
Oh, I was already looking at
Yeah.
things that looked like prisons.
Prisons, dark ominous towers. Yeah. Yeah, we're not in your dread realm at all. Jody.
It is called Tower 1. But yeah, so basically, anyone that was effectively accused of being a part of this rebellion is sent to this frozen northern prison. Let's come up with a cool name for this. Let's call it. Trying to think of something where like plants don't grow. We could just call it the desert. Well, we already have an obsidian desert, though.
The tundra?
Ooh, I like that. The tundra. The tundra tower. Even nicer. I like alliteration. So we're going to take the tundra tower. And so basically, as far as where in history this happens, I kind of like the idea that this was a fairly recent thing, like within a generation or two. Everything else has been around for a while, but society is still kind of recovering from this rebellion. And I always like, again, I don't like this as in it's a good thing. This is a horrible thing that shouldn't happen, but it happens constantly in history. Whereas a very simple way to get rid of people that you don't like is you accuse them of harboring sympathies for the rebellion. Which the rebels have their own name for their society, and there are still rebels that exist, but society as a whole does not even allow you to remember what they called their group. They are the rebels. To kind of dehumanize them a little bit more. So,
You feel there was like a day when like the aristocracy, no, you went way too far, like, or was this like a culmination?
I think I like the idea of indifference because it's just not used enough, and when you have people that are that powerful, they probably wouldn't realize that they went too far. There's probably a large portion of the society that does believe that, okay, this isn't okay. But the people that are in power because they are powerful.
No, I meant like, did the rebels go too far is what I mean. Because Scott mentioned curse.
Well, what if the original reason was executed publicly, and as part of it rules, he put a curse
actually, what if, in contrast with the Waking Lands, he was executed in the capital city? When he died, his curse was the capital city will always be in night. Not like darkness, as in wherever the sun is, they always see stars above them. And they are just there in a constant night area. And again, because the aristocracy lives there, it's not a huge deal to them because, again, they have magic. They can create their own lights when they need them. However, let's draw another circle because circles are fun.
Or is it the city itself, or is it like several miles out?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The city itself... Really? This is much harder than it needs to be. Okay, remove it. So the city itself, and we're going to make this... Let's make it black. Okay. So the city itself is perfectly fine. Because again, they've got so much magic that they can counteract the fact. And night is pretty. And the aristocracy, that indifference goes because they really kind of enjoy arts and things looking pretty in that. And so they're perfectly fine with just having starry nights all the time. But this whole area around it is also cloaked in nighttime. So there aren't... all the farms here have to be nocturnal farms that grow things like mushrooms and other things that can grow in darkness. And the kind of lower class people have to work 2 or 3 times harder to till things when there's no light to feed the plants. So...
How many days do you think it is until you can see day? Like how long do you think you can travel? Like, does it take a day travel, or is it like...
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we do need to set up how far we're going here. So what if... So to get out of this, we've got basically, it looks like we've got about 5 feet. So what if we say each foot that you travel is effectively a day's worth of travel? And so to get out of here, if I put the marker on the capital city and I just go up, this is about a 4-day travel. So it's roughly about 3 to 4 days to get out of darkness, depending on where you go. How does that sound for you guys?
Yeah.
And I think like you were saying about the aristocracy, so that means the high level spellcasters that you were talking about. So a sign of status could also be how much daylight do you have in your home.
Yeah, no, I kind of like that. The idea that the more powerful you are, and I would almost go as far as to say, not to bring skin color into this, but being tan in this city is remarkably difficult because you don't get any sight. So most of the populace is a little bit paler.
Pale.
And so one of the ways that you kind of show off your wealth is just by being able to have a tan or anything thing like that. Like effectively,
Sun elf.
Well, I'm always hesitant to bring kind of skin
that.
color into anything because it gets misconstrued really, really badly, really quickly. But I kind of like the idea that the darker your skin, the higher the place you have in society, just because it's a complete opposite of how a lot of people view how societies have been built in the real world. But I also don't like the idea of using skin color as a...
I think we.
Yeah,
I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah, we'll get rid of that then. But still, no, I like the idea of, or maybe just not so much. Maybe it's just the idea that the more green plants you have, and the more kind of plants that require photosynthesis, because that's how you effectively measure your sun is how many plants you can keep alive.
How lush your garden is.
Yeah.
Songbirds that sing in the morning.
Yeah, things like that.
Like, it would probably require a lot of magic to grow crops, but not as much to like a greenhouse.
Yeah. And so
maybe wait for the houses that do you see right there? With them, it was top in the houses have a fire
yeah,
growing on it and
I kind of even like the idea that the less, the more things that you grow that don't have a purpose, like flowers and things like that, that you can't eat, are a sign of aristocracy. Because again, there's only
yeah.
so much light to go around, and so the more crops you grow, the lower your status. The more things like flowers or cactus or
Well, again,
whatever,
and
you know,
again,
things
getting
that their
getting
only
food would be a
purpose
problem.
is to look pretty. I
Yeah.
think that would
Getting
be a
food,
really
getting
cool.
food outside the city would be a problem, though, right?
I again, I still kind of see it as kind of a post-scarcity style society, because again, they can get food shipped
Yeah.
in and stuff like that. But the idea of basically wasting light on plants that do nothing but look pretty, I kind of like
Oh, yeah.
that idea. You know, the idea that light is a very limited resource within the city and the kind of shadowlands. We can call that. Oh, we can even label them the Shadowlands.
Everywhere
I'm getting Dune vibes with like the greenhouse in the
What if? Oh,
Harkonnen Palace.
what if they don't like it being referred to? Like everyone else calls them the Shadowlands, but they don't. They consider it like no, we're like Aurora or something. I don't know.
Maybe they
Borealis.
maybe they changed the name of the capital city when this happens. And the capital city is called Twilight. Because they like to kind of emphasize the beauty of the darkness. And so they call it the Twilight Lands. Everybody else calls it the Shadowlands. How does that sound? And their capital city is called Twilight. And it's very pretty.
Yeah, there's
and
some.
one thing I know told you that maybe it happens with a generation ago so but I mean given the societal changes that we're talking about
Yeah, maybe it is closer to maybe like 3 or 4.
we
Yeah, we're looking closer to like 100-ish years.
yeah.
I still think this would be the most recent event
Yeah.
from all the
Yeah.
other stuff that's gone along. Like the Waking Lands, we're talking millennia ago.
Yeah.
The Steam War.
3-4 generations ago.
Yeah.
But this rebellion would have been maybe 100 years ago.
Yeah. Oh.
Cool. All right. So the
Like
last
dignitaries know, like don't fucking call it the Shadowlands.
Yeah.
Get there, don't say that.
Yeah, don't call it that. So there's 2 other things that we're supposed to do. I'm going to let you guys choose one or the other, just again because this world's only going to exist for a month. We want either enigmas or mysteries of the world, which you've kind of already started doing with like the Waking Lands and stuff like that. And then what terrible threats cast a shadow over the world. So I don't think every one of us needs to come up with something, but what would you guys like as either a mystery that affects the entire world or a threat that is something that no matter where you live, this is a threat that you always have to deal with? Please don't everyone speak at once. We're not live on the internet or anything.
Um,
I don't know, guys. What do you think of like a threat from beyond?
By the way, if anybody is watching us do this live on twitch.tv/trainerjujujodi, feel free to type in chat if you guys have ideas. Every RPG that I run, I create ways for chat to kind of interact with the game. We will have redemptions that you can use that'll give give the players things like Fabula points and reroll tokens and stuff like that. So, yeah. Anyone in chat that has ideas, feel free to type them in chat. We may or may not take them, but it's always fun. So I guess let's start off with: do we want a mystery or do we want a threat? So let's narrow it down. Let's narrow it down to that. And the big difference is basically going to be if we create a threat, this is going to be something that everybody has to deal with every day, whether it's monsters will randomly show up, natural disasters happen on a fixed interval, things like that are threats. Whereas a mystery would be, this is something like, every so often people will just show up in a settlement that come from nowhere. They will interact with the settlement for a little bit and then they will leave. And no one ever finds them again. Or something like that, where a mystery is not something you have to prepare for, it's something that just kind of happens and doesn't make a lot of sense. So, which one of those sounds more appealing to you guys?
I mean, we're going to be heroes, right?
Mm-hmm. So, threats?
Well, maybe, are we feeling threats? We're going to be adventurers? Or are we trying to uncover a mystery?
I don't know.
Well, let's come back to this. Because we don't have characters yet. So, as part of the character creation process, maybe we will kind of come up with something that makes the most sense. So,
I'll also say my vote's for threat.
All right. So we'll come back to this once we have characters. The next part, the group creation. They give a couple kind of examples of reasons that you guys would come together. I'm not going to use them right now because I'm more interested in let's see what kind of characters we could come up with. And then when we start seeing the stuff that you guys are building, we can come up with a reason why you guys would eventually be together, whether chosen by fate or, whether you guys have some kind of common goal of some sort. So, let's talk about character creation. I have built 3 Fabula Ultima characters on my YouTube channel. It is a surprising amount of fun to do. And the way that they recommend you build your characters is how I'm going to kind of lead us through this. And it starts off by choosing your character's identity. If you guys, I think in the Discord message that we have, there should be a link for you guys to be able to look at the book. If you want to go to page 154.
In the core book?
In the core book, yep.
Problem loading. The portion I was looking at this thing earlier, a few minutes ago. Okay, fight me.
Yeah. I was just seeing that now, and it would show that for a second, and then the page would load.
Okay, refresh and it comes up. Okay, cool.
So the first thing we do is you're going to choose your identity. Your character's identity is a short sentence that quickly summarizes how they currently see themselves. So the way that I've built my characters thus far is the very next page, they actually have what's called the identity creation table. And I've just rolled on the creation tables, there's a couple of them, to kind of come up with my characters. And if you guys want to do that, you can. It's a lot of fun, and it made me make choices that I never would have. Otherwise, if you already have kind of a character in your head, the creation tables might give you kind of words that you can use that kind of sums it up. I know Imp and I have already started talking about his character before we went live tonight. So, as far as what you see as your character's identity, how would you? And the thing with the identity, the way that the game is played, is you are always going to be rolling 2 dice, and they're going to be based on one of your 4 attributes. So the 4 attributes: dexterity, insight, might, and willpower. And the way that any roll works is I'm going to choose 2 of those attributes, and you're going to roll the dice that are associated with them. So if I was to ask you for a dexterity insight roll, you would take your dexterity die, which could be anywhere from a d6 to a d12, and you would take your insight die, which again, d6 to d12. You'd roll them, add them together, and that's your result. With your identity, you can use what's called a Fabula point, which you get in various ways, but you use it to power some of your abilities. And to do this, you can invoke your identity to reroll one or both of those dice on a check by burning a Fabula point. So you want to make sure that your identity is something that you go, like, to give an example, Freedom Fighting Brawler is an example identity that they created. So if I was playing this Freedom Fighting Brawler and we're in a situation where the empire that we are fighting against, that we're fighting for freedom against, has come in, and we're attempting to kind of protect some people from them. I roll the way that I normally roll, meaning it's roll bad. I can go, well, I'm a freedom fighting brawler, and if I lose this, then there's a chance that these people are going to lose their freedom. So that aspect of me, my identity, is going to make me push myself even harder. And so I'm going to re-roll these. So when you're creating your identity, make sure it is specific enough and unique enough that you could find ways to be able to invoke it, because that's going to be a major part of how effective you are in this game. So, Imp, we've talked about aspects of your character. Now that we have a bit of a world, do you have an idea for an identity that's kind of leaping out to you?
Yeah, slight little like alteration from what I had. So yeah, smiling naive mage.
Smiling naive mage. Okay.
Aspiring spellcaster. Wants to do more. Wants to help. Wants adventure.
Interesting. Cool. So go ahead and put that. If you go to journal, I'm going to bring up my character sheet. So the character sheets in this are not particularly great. They're not bad, but they're not the most amazing character sheets I've ever dealt with. And I'm going to pop this out so it's easier for me to play around with. So obviously identity you're going to put there. We'll come back. Well, let's go ahead and get through identity, theme, and origin for Imp's character, and we'll come back to Scott and Dan in a second here. So theme is another thing that you can invoke, and it's a little bit more general. Since this is everyone's first game, I'm basically going to kind of limit you guys to the suggested themes here, just because it's easier for me. But it's basically going to be a single word that kind of describes your motivation. So the suggested themes that they have are ambition, anger, belonging, doubt, duty, guilt, hope, justice, mercy, and vengeance. So, for your character, who is a smiling, naive mage, what is the theme of this character? What kind of motivates them to go out and adventure? Obviously, naivety is going to play a little bit of a part in there, but you can be naive and stay at home. Ambitious? Okay. So what aspect of ambition? Is it you're trying to prove yourself? Is it
He wants to prove himself as a spellcaster. He can be a spellcaster.
Okay.
He can be the very best.
Like no one ever was?
Yeah.
Wow. Legally distinct enough to not be confused for a copywritten entity. So that being said, your origin is probably the most simplistic of the three aspects of this part of your character. Where do you come from?
He comes from a small village.
So let's, but small village where?
In the Earth Kingdom.
In the Earth Crystal Nation. But you definitely did not come from the Twilight Lands, or did you come from the Twilight Lands?
Okay, he is definitely not from the aristocracy.
So let's actually go and let's put. And you come from a very small village, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. The funny thing is, though, actually, it's kind of funny how this turned out, because actually, what I ran in my head is I didn't imagine, I didn't realize had to make an entire kingdom, but I had an idea for the valley he comes from.
So where would you say this village rests? Would it be closer to the Earth Crystal? Would it be far away? Would it be bordering on the Wind Crystal lands, over more by the Water Crystal Ocean?
Because I was thinking in regards to trade, in regards to that, is also, if it's tied to verdant, the more closer you get to the crystal, the more verdant like there. So I'm thinking in regards to that and what they have in demand. So probably like right here.
Okay. So just outside the kind of dangerous part, like you probably grew up close enough to the dangerous wilds around the Earth Crystal. We can even call them the Earth Crystal wilds. That you probably knew people that ventured too close and were attacked by dinosaurs or whatever exists in there. Cool. Let's give it a name. What do you want to call it? Maybe even call it Tranquility Village.
I was actually thinking, because of what they grow there, Starlight. Because Starlight Valley, so Starlight, they're one of the, well, because they would be, because of several villages around there. Glimmer, because they're a small village, so Glimmer.
So Glimmer Village. That I may or may not have misspelled. Doesn't matter. I'm the dungeon master. I'm the game master. That's how we spell it in my world. Alright, so that's Glimmer Village. So we've got that. We'll play with classes in a second here.
Sure.
Let's go to Dan or Scott. Do either one of you guys have good ideas you want to go with? Dan, you look like you are ready. And by ready, I mean I choose you. So what are you thinking as far as a character? Do you have a character in mind that you'd like to play?
I had a Cole character in mind, and then somebody created the Waking Lands.
Okay.
So my new character is a young, gifted Magitech engineer scavenger.
Okay. To make it flow a little bit better, what if it was a say those words again?
A young, gifted Magitech scavenger engineer.
So what if it was a young, gifted scavenging Magitech engineer? Just to make them flow a little bit easier. Cool. So so you're going to be, I'm assuming you're going to be from the Wind Crystal Nation.
Yes.
Okay.
My grandfather was chief engineer on one of the skyships.
Okay.
Best in the land until one day the skyship literally just fell out of the sky.
Okay.
Not sure why that happened, but
I bet you he was blamed for it.
He took the blame for it, but it was not his fault.
Okay.
And so my family has been kind of ostracized a little bit, and
Let's
so I'm seeking redemption.
let's go a little bit further. What if the airship that fell? Um, I don't think I have a ship. I wish I did, but I don't think I have that. Okay, so let's say the airship that fell was damaged enough that it was unsalvageable and or is unrepairable, and instead of salvaging it or anything, unlike most of the other people that live in the Wind Crystal lands, you guys are actually terrestrial. You guys live in the kind of husk of this airship, and you converted it into a living space,
Okay.
and so that's your home. And where would you like that to be? Would you like to be kind of bordering the Waking Lands?
I'm thinking bordering the Waking Lands
Okay.
because I also thought my mother, who's a famous adventurer,
Mm-hmm.
she went into the Waking Lands thinking that maybe the key to what went wrong is in there, but she, she hasn't been heard from.
Okay. Interesting. So let's talk about a theme. Um, what about doubt for your theme? Because the description they have of doubt for suggested themes is you need to find the answer to a burning question. So what if your doubt is finding the answer to the Waking Lands and what is there, including your mother, but other things too? Because I could totally see
Right.
you being one of those people that would kind of venture into the Waking Lands to scavenge and just not tell anyone that that's where you found your stuff. And every
I
so
mean,
often, you'd have a new invention that you created that seems very unique.
there's a civilization there, but nobody can get to it.
Sure, I like it. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
And then obviously your origin is just going to be the downed airship.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's go with Scott. What you thinking? You got a kind of an idea of a character?
I have a two or three of that I'm kind of throwing around in my head.
Okay. Well, you can now see how part of your party is forming. Obviously, we have two characters that I'm going to work with the players individually to figure out what's going on. But you have one person that's going to be a mage of some sort, and another one that seems to be leaning into the realm of like tinkerer, artificer style. So does that narrow down your choices at all?
Not really.
Okay. Well,
Oh,
well,
The thing I like about this is you could have the same class, so to speak, but you could be completely different builds.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, and the fact that once we get into the actual classes themselves, I'll explain it for the audience, and help you out. The likelihood of you being able to choose, because you basically get to create your character as a combination of either two or three classes, and so the likelihood of anyone choosing the same two or three classes should be relatively low. And even if you do, if you choose different abilities within those classes, you're still
Everybody's pizza is different.
So, what are you? You said you got two or three. What are you kind of thinking?
Well, one out of ability rather than gun swinging, right?
Okay.
And then the other one is a warrior monk. Um, kind of like the idea I was imagining it anyway. Like, she was just basically, um,
Well, I mean, from the worlds that we or the world we've created thus far, obviously, your strategist gunslinger could fit very very well in the Fire Crystal Empire.
Yeah.
Um, so if we wanted to go that route, that would be a very simple thing. As far as your monk effectively, which I mean, it brings a tear to my
Yeah.
eye. Um,
Way wow to try and be Daddy's favorite.
it's weird. He just keeps getting Fabula points. I don't know why. Um, I'm a fan of going against what fits the best. So having, especially since we haven't really delved into them as much as the other nations, simply because we didn't put any history for them. What if we were to have your character be from the water crystal nation? Um, and if you were to go with the gunslinger thing, again, the water crystal is very kind of Magitech focused, but you would be using a weapon that is effectively fire powered. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
firearms are. That could create a very interesting situation for your character. On the other hand, if you wanted more the monk route, having, you know, if we talk about something like Bruce Lee, the idea behind Jeet Kune Do was to be like water. And water is used a lot in martial arts to describe a lot of different aspects of martial arts in general. And I've always really liked the explanation that Bruce Lee had for what Jeet Kune Do was, because Jeet Kune Do was created during a time when Eastern martial arts were incredibly rigid. Each version of Kung Fu had very specific stances that you had to learn, and it was very, very stance based. And Jeet Kune Do, when he was kind of explaining it, he's like, well, be like water. When you put water in a glass, it becomes the glass. When you put water on the table, it becomes the table. It changes to fit its surrounding. And he created Jeet Kune Do under the idea that this rigid adherence to stances was hurting martial arts, because each stance had things that it excelled at and things that it wasn't good at. And so, in order for you to kind of change your approach in a fight, you had to switch to a completely different stance and a completely different way of using your body. And he felt that that was too limiting. And so the idea of a martial artist that is literally like water, I think could be really interesting. And would still give you some kind of, especially if you kind of forego the tech side and become very, very focused on the more magical side, you would still have that kind of friction with your society that I think creates interesting stories. So, what are your thoughts? This is me just throwing stuff at you. Anything kind of jumping out going, hey, I like that?
Well, I mean, anyway, the idea of being from the water and fire, whatever.
We'll come up with good names later.
I was thinking.
This RBG is brought to you by Aquafina.
Kind of bad avoidable, but I mean, kind of for reference, I was kind of like, she was born, like how she was at the temple and she was, like,
Okay.
So,
So kind of along the line of to bring it back to kind of Final Fantasy terms, kind of
yeah,
a like Mystic Knight style character where they have elemental abilities, but they focus them through weapons of some sort, whether that's your fists or a sword
yeah,
or whatever, but kind of that kind of elemental knight style thing
yeah,
with an emphasis on following some sort of honor code. Because I mean that monks are effectively knights without armor. I mean
yeah,
that's what they are. Knights serve
yeah,
a sovereign of some sort, whereas monks follow a principle. But they both are going to have codes of honor and stuff like that. Interesting. Okay, so let's turn that into an identity. Um,
so maybe, mm,
I mean, we
I'm
can.
a bit of diet.
So what about a free spirited elemental knight without a homeland? So what if you had to leave, or you were effectively banished from uh, the Water Crystal Empire for some odd reason?
Ooh, alright.
Or we could go we could go the exact opposite way. What if the reason that you left, I think I might like this a little better. What if the reason that you left the Empire, because we're not, obviously, we're going to have people from other nations and stuff, we're going to have a reason to get you out and out from the water. What if you are a free-spirited elemental knight of the royal army? What if you are specifically you were sent out for a particular purpose, and because of the secrecy of because of this is a secrecy of the Water Crystal Empire, you're not allowed to tell anyone why you left, but you have this very specific reason that you and I can talk about off screen, and yeah, and that purpose can kind of be interwoven with why you guys are all coming together. I kind of like that. I think that might be interesting. What do you think? Do you like the idea that you're under orders? Do you prefer the idea that you're kind of under your own orders and you're doing things for?
No, I like the idea being older.
Okay.
Um, I mean, what if I went with even
Sure.
member of the royal family that was sent out for whatever purpose?
So we could even go as far as to say you are like a third or fourth son. So as much as yes, you are technically in line for the throne, you're 3 or 4 steps removed from it, and this is effectively your way to prove that you are a worthwhile member of the family, because you already, like, your eldest brother already been kind of
Yeah,
already knows that he's going to be king, and the
yeah,
one below that already has a job, and so as the jobs just get kind of handed out more and more, you're far enough down that you're like, I need something so I can be an important member of this
yeah.
family. Oh, I'm going to take this secret mission, and that's what's going to make me an important member of the
Alright,
family.
yeah,
I think that's cool.
alright.
All right, so we've got your identity, your theme.
My team, I will, let's see,
What about belonging? Since we're talking about family and stuff like that, the idea of belonging, you're afraid of being alone, forgotten, or abandoned. What if we kind of zero in on that idea of
Yeah.
the reason that you're doing this is you are kind of being forgotten by the rest of your family. Your eldest brother's the king. Brother under that is head of the the royal knights. The brother under that is another part, and you're just Phil. And so this is a way for you to not be kind of forgotten by your entire family.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say either Hawaii or Ambition.
Well, and since
I,
we have an ambition already, it's
yeah.
not impossible to have two people with the same theme, but if we can, I'd like to kind of steer us into,
Yeah.
and I think
So
belonging
let's go with Hawaii. Same
same but
idea.
different.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, and then your origin obviously is going to be Water City. We'll come up with a
Yeah.
name for it later. You can just put Water Capital or something. All right. Now we get the fun part. So, the way that creating character works in Fabula Ultima is you start at level 5. And the reason you start at level 5 is every level that you have, you get to take a skill from one of the, I think there's like 13, let me count. There are 15 classes in the core book. I've also made available, there's a high fantasy expansion. If you guys want to get real weird with some of your classes.
For a hot second, I thought it'd be real funny to make my guy a necromancer, but I thought, like, no, that's.
Well, and necromancer, they have a necromancer that they
No, he sounds like this.
and no, the necromancer is not particularly balanced as of yet. They do have a necromancer class that they released separately as like Halloween last year. They also have a card mage, which I love everything about it except for the fact that it's broken as hell because it was released as an April Fool's thing.
Card mage / monk.
No, we're not gonna. The
And he will
mechanic
talk
for that.
with a Louisiana accent.
Yeah. The mechanic for that one is you actually have a deck of cards that you draw from at the beginning of battle, and depending on what you have, you could burn mind points to play cards. It is a cool mechanic, but it needs some refining, and I don't have time to do it. So anyway, let's start since we're already dealing with Scott. Let's start with you. So obviously we want a combination of kind of magic and martial for this Kika character. How do you see this character wielding their magic? Because there's a couple different ways we could go about this. There's a class called the Arcanist, which is basically a summoner, but the way that it works is you basically summon a thing called an Arcana, and what it does is while it exists, it gives you a benefit of some sort, and we could kind of create one that makes the most sense for you. And then if you dismiss it voluntarily, it can have another kind of big effect that it does. To give an example, one of the example arcanums they have is the Arcanum of Frost. When you summon it, which is called merging, or it gives you what's called a merge effect. You have resistance to ice damage and are immune to the enraged condition, and any ice damage you deal ignores resistance. And if you dismiss it, choose any number of creatures you can see. Each of them suffers 30 ice damage. This damage ignores resistance. So as you can see, you'll have kind of a lasting effect and then like a banishment effect that tends to be really big. On the other hand, we could go with Elementalists. They actually have a spell. Elementalists are your basic magic users. And Elementalists actually have a spell called Elemental Weapon, which allows you to just hit somebody with one of your weapons and it does that elemental damage. resistance and vulnerabilities compared to something like D&D 5th edition. Most monsters you're going to fight will have resistances, and a lot of them will have vulnerabilities as well. So being able to change elemental damage types in that is really powerful in Fabula Ultima, as it is in like any Final Fantasy game. Like hit a bomb with ice and bad things happen to the bomb. So what are you thinking, Scott? Do you like?
I want to see elemental.
Okay. So, if we go to the character sheet, if you go to the class section, the way that you have to make this work is you'll see, I think I'm actually going to go and create a new character because I have a character that I already created in here and I can't remember how it works. So I'm going to go save changes. I'm going to pop out the character. Boom. So now it doesn't show up on screen. All right, so we go to class, and you will notice there are no classes there. So you're going to click Add. And for the Elementalist, since we're taking that one first, it'll ask, what bonus does it give you? And you just click +5 MP. And if you try to change the level, it won't let you. And we'll deal with that in a second. Ignore the heroic skill section, and then you'll see it has a bunch of skill areas listed.
Yeah.
So what you can do is literally just go down the list here and type in every one of those things and just kind of copy paste. And next to each one of these skills, you'll have a level. So whenever you take a level in any of those, you would just change the level here. And if I put a level in 1, you'll notice that the level of this class goes up by 1 and your total levels goes up by 1. So that's how this character sheet works if you want to use the one in here. So for this particular one, obviously if you go elemental magic, you can learn an elementalist spell, and that would give you the spell that you want, and I'll show you how to put that in here in just a second. The other way you can go, it also has a spell blade ability that basically allows you to cast spells from your sword as well if you want to do something aside from just having elemental weapon. So remember, this is going to be one of either 2 or 3 classes. So what are you thinking as far as, do you want to just go one thing of elemental magic and then focus more on the martial side? Do you want to do more elemental kind of stuff? What are you thinking?
I mean, maybe some of the ideas.
So I didn't get that last part. What was it?
Maybe some ideas.
Move there, move here. So you're thinking about Arcanist and Elementalist, or
Yeah.
okay, no, that's you can definitely go that route. So as far as let's stick with Elementalist for right now, because we're gonna did you want both of them, or are you kind of choosing between the 2?
Yeah, both of
Okay.
them.
So let's start with Elementalist. Do you want to start with Elemental Magic, and the spell that you learn is Elemental Weapon then?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got 1 level in Elementalist. Did you want to take the Spellblade ability as well?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So put both of those in your character sheet. And we've now got 2 levels in Elementalist. If we go to Arcanist, the first thing you want to take for Arcanist is going to be Bind and Summon, just because that is what everything else kind of hinges around. You need the ability to summon something, unless you see something else. I think everything else here, yeah, is entirely built around Arcana. So you have one level in Bind and Sissa Summon. And we're not going to do it here on stream, but you and I will sit down and think about what is the Arcanum. We'll build your Arcanum a little bit later so that you have that. Did you want to kind of invest a little bit more to strengthen the Arcanist part of it? Did you want to... Because right now, you don't have anything that's really helping your martial abilities, and we've used 3 of your 5 levels. So, do you want to go with something that'll give you some more martial abilities? Do you like... Because you can still use... let me look at the weapon list really quick here. Yeah, so as far as... You don't currently have access to being able to use martial weapons. And martial weapons include things like swords are martial weapons, spears are martial weapons, axes are martial weapons. But daggers are considered basic ones. Iron knuckles, which are your better version of fist weapons, you can use right now without anything. Flails you can use without needing martial weapons. So, what are you thinking?
How about Fury?
Sorry, I didn't get... My brain just stopped for about 5 seconds. What did you say? So the question I have for you, do you want to, if you want to use a sword or something like that, we need to choose a class that will give you access to martial melee weapons. If you don't, if you're fine using like a whip or a flail or a dagger, then we can actually just focus on Elementalist and Arcanist, or we can pick another class to give you something kind of interesting like Fury. But my question is, do you see this character using swords are all martial, spears are all martial, hammers are basic, but axes are martial. So how do you see this character kind of wading into battle? And do you see them wearing heavy armor? Because that'll be another thing that we want to focus on.
No, I don't see them wearing heavy armor.
Okay. So kind of more of a kind of elemental fencer style thing, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Do you see them using a sword?
Yeah, maybe like a rapier.
Okay.
Saber.
Well, then we're going to want to look at... Okay. Yeah, both of those will give you your access. The big difference between them is going to be Darkblade's obviously a little bit darker, which could be very cool with a theme of belonging and stuff like that. Could very easily be a reason that you chose that, as it just gave you that little more power so that you could do this very difficult thing.
Yeah.
And then Fury is kind of, that is your kind of barbarian style character where they do a little bit more. They can be kind of tanky, and they, as they get hurt more and do more, they do more damage. So which one of those do you like better?
I think Darkblade is coming to me.
Cool. So which... So there's a lot of cool stuff in Darkblade. I really like the Darkblade. So there's a few different things. Just by taking the Darkblade, you get access to martial melee weapons and martial armor. But the skills that you have here, Um, Dark blades are built around bonds, which we haven't really talked about much here because we'll define bonds when we actually play the game. But basically, you can have up to 6 different bonds, and the bonds themselves are based on anywhere from 1 to 3 conflicting emotions. So you choose a character, and then you have admiration versus inferiority, loyalty versus mistrust, or affection versus hatred. And when you form a bond, you can invoke that bond in the same way that you invoke your identity to kind of reroll. Or for the Dark Blade, you can do other things like Heart of Darkness. You can create a bond when you go into Crisis, which is basically when you're at half your hit points. Or Shadow Strike allows you to Agony. If you have a bond towards one of the creatures that you hit, you can actually recover hit points and mind points from it. So the Dark Knight, or the Dark Blade in and of itself, is very much about these kind of bonds and kind of drawing power from your connection to other people. So what do you see something in the Dark Blade that kind of screams that I like this?
I don't like with Shadow Strike.
Awesome. Basically the old kind of Final Fantasy Darkness skill. Sacrifice some hit points to do some extra damage. Me likey. And that can definitely become something cool that we play around with. So go ahead and add to your classes the Dark Blade and put 1 level in Shadow Strike. You have 1 more level that you can put in any one of those 3 classes. Is there one or another? Like if you go with Elementalist, you could learn another spell. Because for Spellblade, you do need an offensive spell that targets a single creature. So learning Glacies is one of the spells that they have for example, which is basically you throw ice at them. You could learn that, or if we wanted to go to Arcanist, we could take some stuff to make your summoning easier to happen. What are you feeling? Or you could take another, you could basically, with Shadow Strike, you could just take a 2nd level in Shadow Strike, which just makes it stronger.
So what is that I have elemental magic, and do I have Spellblade?
Again, up to you. I thought you had mentioned that you wanted to take Spellblade so you could like cast spells through your Sister Sword.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do that, you're going to want to take at least 1, because Elemental Weapon is not an offensive spell.
Oh.
Because it all what it does is it just again turns your weapon into one of those elemental damage types.
Spellblade.
So if you're looking at the book, any spell with like a red lightning bolt next to it, those are your. So with the character you've described, Glacies would probably make the most sense because it does cold damage, and it would work with Spellblade. So
yeah, that's so great.
okay. So for your character to learn both those spells, you need 2 levels in Elemental Magic, 1 level in Spellblade, and then you also have a level in Bind and Summon on the Arcanist, and then a level in Shadow Strike from the Darkblade. Sound good? So that's your 5 levels. We'll deal with equipment and stuff in a little bit. Let's talk to Imp. What are you thinking? I'm sure that you probably have most of your classes picked out, but what are you thinking?
Well, I was thinking because this is how it turned out with the kingdom and light involved. I was thinking about Spiritist,
Spiritus is very cool.
and I was thinking about Elementalist, but then I was thinking like also like he's kind of like going into magic. Maybe he's like beyond what people would recommend. So I was also kind of like considering Entropist.
Entropist is another one that's really, really interesting, because a lot of people, when you hear Entropist, you kind of think, like, dark magic and stuff like that, which, from where you're from, that could be even more interesting, because that was effectively what was used in the Rebellion. But the other thing that Entropist does is they do time magic and luck magic.
That's what I was thinking too. I was like something like a long time or luck seemed really interesting as well.
So yeah, like the stop spell is really interesting. They also do have drain type spells like Drain Spirit and Drain Vigor, where you could literally kind of drain energy from people.
I don't think that's my boy. I don't think he'd do that.
Gamble, however, I think might be interesting. Because basically, I'll read the description because
Where are the entropy spells? Were those?
If you go to the Entropist page on 190, the very next page, so 192 and 193, that's where all the Entropist spells are. And Gamble's at the top of 193. And it's, you summon a vortex of chaotic energy, roll your current willpower die once for every 10 mind points spent while casting the spell, then keep the single die you prefer. The number on that die determines the effect of the spell. And so you can lose hit points and mind points. Each creature present in the scene gets poisoned. Each creature present in the scene gets slowed. Choose up to 3 creatures and heal them. Or choose any number of creatures you can see. Each of them suffers 30 damage of one of these 6 elemental types. So
I was thinking for the starting class, I was thinking Spiritist.
Okay. And you can go both of those. You can go Spiritist and Entropist. So as far as, let's start with Spiritist. What are you thinking as far as your initial skill? Did you want to start with spiritual magic or rituals? To kind of explain them, because the Spiritists and a few other classes have skills that just give them access to rituals. Spells in this are effectively your direct damage and things like that. Spells are mostly for combat. Rituals is how you use magic outside of combat. And there's a whole process on how to figure out what they do. But basically, if you want to use, let's say for Scott's character, you have the ability to control kind of water magic enough to turn your blade into ice or something, but you want to use that to create an ice bridge. There isn't an ice bridge spell, so we would have you perform a ritual to do that. So anytime, the only limitations for rituals is they can't do direct damage.
Yeah.
That's what spells are for.
The first thing I thought of when I saw this, I was thinking like I was going like anime blast. I was thinking Lux. Which is
basically light damage.
Page, yeah.
So yeah, just okay, makes sense. Did you want to get? I mean, if you. So basically, for every level of spiritual magic you take, the skill, you learn a Spiritist spell. So, did you want to learn multiple spells? Are you good with? No, Lux is really good for me. I'm going to go to Entropist or something else.
I think he would definitely like to learn multiple spells. He is an aspiring mage.
Well, my question is, do you want to learn multiple Spiritist spells?
Oh, okay. Um,
Because obviously we're going to go Entropist, and we might go a third spellcasting class. We want to go Chimerist, or I think Chimerist might actually be a lot of fun for the kind of knowledge, you know, your character wanting to kind of go out and learn that you kind of describe them as. I think it might be cool that every so often they just learn magic from monsters that you're fighting as opposed to traditional magic spells. Or not.
Possibly.
So let's start with Spiritus. Do you want just one Spiritus spell, or do you want a couple? Because we know you're taking Lux.
Yeah. I think with that, I think if it were to go another, I think he would like his. I also added Heart of Gold, so I think I could also see him learning Heal.
Okay. Cool. So you've got 2 levels of Spiritist. Do you want to... because again, Spiritist... The thing I like about all of these classes is there's enough here that as you start doing things like you have support magic, where if you cast a spell that targets an ally and you have a bond towards them, they get a bonus equal to the strength of your bond. So that could be fun. Or again, if you wanted to be able to cast Spiritism rituals, which are basically rituals that involve like light magic and things like that, you could go that route. Or healing power just makes it easier for you to heal people. Did you want to play around more in Spiritist, or do we want to kind of branch out? Because you need a minimum of 2 classes, but you can have up to 3. And if you want to go 4 levels of Spiritist and 1 other class, that's perfectly fine. Again,
Let's take a look at the Entropist.
Let's do it. So with Entropist, obviously, you're probably going to want to take Entropic Magic for 1 of your levels. So you get some sort of spell.
Sorry, what page is that?
191.
191. Because it's the PDF versus the book page. Okay, yeah, there we go.
Should be 190 on the PDF. So, Entropic Magic gives you access to a spell. Another one that, just because I know you, Lucky 7.
Just because I made the one character that I did, and I took every
I
luck feat.
think it would be... So wait, the basics of it is you have a lucky number. At the beginning of each 7, that number is 7. Once per scene, after you perform a check, you may replace the value shown on one of the dice you rolled with your lucky number. And then the number that you replaced becomes your new lucky number. So this is effectively dice manipulation. You roll something you don't like, you can go, well, my lucky number is 7, so that 1 is now a 7.
Oh, okay.
And now you have that 1 is your new lucky number, and you can use that to replace one
But
later
that'll be
on.
once per session.
No, it's once per scene after you perform a check.
Oh, saying. Okay.
You may replace the value shown.
Oh.
And then if you do, the replaced value becomes your new lucky number. So every new scene, you have this lucky number that you can just insert after you perform a check. So you're only able to do it to your rolls, but it still gives you the ability to kind of control your rolls a little bit more than most people.
I either I choose that or I choose a spell. It's not both.
Well, if you wanted Lucky 7, you just have to take that skill. So again, you have 5 levels that you can choose. Mm-hmm. So if you take Entropic Magic and then also take Lucky 7, well, then you've put 2 levels into Entropist. So yeah. So if you want that ability, and if you didn't want to take any Entropic Magic, you could just take Lucky 7. It's how many levels do you want to spend in this class? There's also Absorb Magic Point, basically every time, or Mind Points. Every time you take damage, you regain Mind Points, which can be very fun. So there's a lot of different things you can do here. Just what ones do you think would be the most fun for your character?
I'll consider that. So I think Lucky 7, and
Okay.
I was thinking like he takes Dispel.
Dispel, very, very nice. Very, very, very nice. So you've got 2 levels in Spiritist. You've got 2 levels in Entropist. You have 1 level left. Either you can put that into either Spiritist or Entropist, or we can choose another class. What are you thinking? Because again, as far as casting classes go, there's Elementalist, obviously. There's Chimerist. And then there's other things as well, like Lore Master and Orator are not technically spellcasters, but they use their mind points for different the things. Obviously, Lore Master is interesting. Was it Lore Master that I did it? Yeah, so one of the things that Lore Master can do that can be a lot of fun, they have a skill called Knowledge is Power. If you only dip into Lore Master for 1 level, what Knowledge is Power is, when you perform an accuracy check, you replace 1 of the attribute dice with Insight. So accuracy checks are whatever you attack with a weapon.
I don't imagine him using a weapon. Is it refers to a martial weapon?
Well, if you run out of, because you will have a weapon. You might have an arcane weapon like a staff or a book or something. But if you run out of magic points, you need something that you can do.
Fair.
So with Knowledge is Power, like to give you an example. Let me go to, so a staff. If you wanted to use a staff, an accuracy check with a staff uses willpower and willpower. So whatever your willpower die is, you would roll that twice, and that would be your accuracy check. If you took that Knowledge is Power thing from Lore Master, you could turn it to Insight and willpower. Or maybe you travel around with a dagger. Maybe you use a dagger for self-defense. You cast all your spells, but you have a dagger for self-defense. Dagger is normally dexterity and insight is generally for your Spiritist, your spell checks are going to be insight and willpower, and then for your Entropist, your spells are also going to be insight and willpower. So for a dagger, normally it would be dexterity and insight. But if you took that, you could replace the dexterity with insight, and now all of your dagger checks, anytime you try to attack with a dagger, it's insight. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So actually, that whoops. Okay, I could see. Yeah. So let's take a level in Lore Master and go for Knowledge is Power.
Cool. All right, then that is your 5 levels. We'll deal with equipment in a little bit. Dan, we've been talking a lot about characters. You got ideas?
I have ideas.
Let me guess. Tinkerer.
That is one of my ideas.
Thought so.
Or I was thinking 3 levels of Tinkerer.
Makes sense. And are you gonna put those all into gadgets, or did you have a kind of spread that you were gonna do?
Was thinking all gadgets.
So if anyone's watched my Designing New Dragon episodes, one of them we did play around with Tinker. Tinker has this interesting thing where they can invest in this gadget skill, and it allows you to specialize in one of 3 different types of gadgets: alchemy, infusions, or magitech. Did you want to put all of those into a single gadget, or kind of get a spread of all 3? What are you thinking?
I was thinking all 3 into magitech.
Makes sense. So you can do the Magispheres?
I could do the Magispheres.
Okay. And you get a magic cannon.
And I get a magic cannon. I was thinking 1 level in Lore Master.
Cool. And what were you thinking about taking for Lore Master?
Quick assessment.
Interesting. So basically, I really like that for your character too, because the idea that they can just go in and just kind of focus themselves and instantly start learning things about it would be a very useful thing in the Waking Lands.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I had also really liked the idea of Wayfarer.
Okay.
The idea of somebody who's traveling around, and then I realized I can get a faithful companion.
Yeah. That'll you and I will have a conversation off screen where we build your companion if that's what you want. Yeah.
I saw
you
that. I
want
was
a
like,
pet?
do I want to build another artificer?
If you want a pet, you can.
Here's the thing. He grew up, in this isolated little
You made a
farm
friend.
downtown.
So,
I made a friend.
is it going to be a construct then? Because you can do beast,
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you
construct,
make a
elemental,
friend?
or plant. So you could grow a friend. An elemental creature could have just appeared and become your friend, or you can literally make new friends.
He made new friends.
Okay, cool. I'm totally into that. Yeah. So, are you guys all kind of figuring out if you want to use the character sheets? Are you kind of understanding how they work? As far as how you add levels and stuff, or are you guys going to use? I'll in our Discord chat, I'll actually give I'll post the form fillable PDF, and you can use that if you don't want to use the ones in Roll20, because again, they're not perfect. They're not bad. They're just not great.
Yeah.
Cool. So everyone's got their classes picked. For equipment, if you go to page 166, 167, the PDF, it should start on page 166. This is the access to the stuff that you can buy for your character. You've got 500 Zenith, which is currency, to buy basic weapons, and then the next page is basic armor and shields. Anything with a red star next to it is martial, and one of your classes have to give you access to that. I think the only person here that has access to any martial stuff is going to be Scott's character, because they got it through their Dark Blade. You're going to want to have a weapon because your mind powers will run out. So whether you want that weapon to be unarmed strikes, or if you want to take a hammer or a staff or something, certain classes, all the weapons are put into categories. Like you have the arcane category, the bow category, and certain classes will have weapons that are, if they're in a particular category, give you bonuses and things. So, and then next to them, it'll tell you what stats you will be using to swing these weapons anytime you try to. There are thrown weapons as well. They use dexterity and insight, and they are the best. And then again, the other thing is armor. You will have two defenses. You will have a defense and then a magic defense. Spell attacks target magic defense. Regular attacks, physical attacks target your defense. And it's going to be based on, your defense is going to be based on your dex die. Your magic defense is going to be based on your insight die. Unless, if you take any of the martial armors, which again is only really available to Scott, those don't base your defense on your dexterity. They just have a static one. So like Brigandine has a static defense of 10. So specifically, Dan, with you, because you can basically make your own weapon, you have to burn inventory points to do it. But because you can make your own weapon, you might want to consider ensuring that you have really nice armor. And then maybe have a backup weapon for when you don't have your magic cannon with you, or maybe the magic cannon is attuned to the wrong element. Does anyone have any questions about choosing your equipment? Pretty straightforward? Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sure I'll bug you later.
Probably. And then the final thing we need to do is dice size. So, like I said, there are 4 attributes, and you're going to assign a die to each attribute. There are 3 different arrays that you can use. You have the Jack of all trade, which is where you just put a D8 in everything. You have the average, where you have 1d10, 2d8s, and 1d6 that you can put anywhere. Or you have the specialized, where you have 2d10s and 2d6s. So depending on how specialized you want, your hit points will be based on your might die. So if you want more hit points, you're going to want to have your might die be bigger. Your mind points, your spell power, is going to be based on your willpower die. So if you are a casting character, you're going to want to put your willpower higher, because that will give you more mind points to be able to use. And then obviously, again, your dex die is going to be your defense score. So does that make sense? Are you guys good on what you're thinking about putting as far as your attributes?
I think so.
Okay. And then for everybody but Dan, you have 6 inventory points. And inventory points are basically used. If you ever need an item that's not like a weapon, you will burn inventory points for them. There's a few specific things that they list as far as what you can use them for. Like if you wanted to drink a potion, a potion costs, I think it's 3 inventory points, and that recovers 50 hit points. If you wanted to restore mind points, that costs 2 inventory points, and you drink an elixir for that. I'll have a cheat sheet for you guys to be able to use. But the only way you recover inventory points is when you're in an area where you could restock, like a city, or you find a traveling merchant, you spend 10 zenith per inventory point to earn them back. There's a few classes, like I think the Wayfarer has ways to restore their own inventory points. And if you guys become real creative to go, well, we found this thing, so could we use that to restore inventory points? But it's basically everything that's not your weapon will be taken care of using inventory points. Make sense? Yeah, it makes a lot more sense when we're playing. But and that, for the most part, the only thing you guys have left to do is come up with names. So, does anyone have a good idea for the name that they want to call their Kiki character yet?
Oh yeah, I know my.
Okay. Yeah. So, what's your character name?
Herbal Loomly. I do have it on the character sheet. You can.
Let's go here. Fabula. And I'm not going to put the whole name there. Fabula. And now your nameplate has your name. Hooray! Dan, do you have a name for your character?
Silas Windbrand.
Silas. You want to spell Silas for me?
Silas, I believe.
Silas, cool. And now we have Silas, who's off center. And now you're not off center. Scott, you have a name?
No, not yet.
Cool. And we will come up with a name later.
Yeah.
So for the most part, we're ready. We have a world map. We have your characters. Obviously, there's going to be 2 more characters. Now that you guys have kind of heard who you're going to be playing with and everything, one of the things we want to do, they have this group creation to the thing. We want to come up with kind of a reason why your characters are coming together. As of right now, we have a representative from the Earth Crystal Kingdoms. We have a representative from the Wind Crystal Kingdoms. We have a representative from the Water Crystal Kingdoms. So, to get all of you guys together, we could have a lot of different things that would get you guys together. But I'm thinking something world-changing that would require everyone to work together might be a reason that you guys are all here. Obviously, Scott's character is here on purpose. But I think for Fabula and Silas, like Silas, you're kind of an outcast from your society. So you showing up, I think, might be a bit of a mistake. Like you weren't supposed to be the person coming, but the person that was sent got killed, got captured, something, and you have just taken their place. Does that kind of gel with what you're thinking?
I can dig that.
And then Furball, I kind of like the idea that he's a mistake. You're just there because you were. You were traveling around doing your Furball thing, and you just happened to be pure fate. You just happened to be there, and you were very useful. Does that sound
Smiling, naive mage with a heart of gold.
kind of like that idea? So, and then the other two characters will figure out why they're joining us in a little bit. So my job over the next week is I'm going to come up with actual specific plot hooks for you guys so we can start playing next week. But more likely than not, we will be starting kind of in media res. So we will be in the middle of something happening when we start our first session. As far as you guys, do you feel kind of comfortable with this system enough that you know your character for the most part? Obviously, as we play, I will teach you how all the rolling and everything works. But
Oh, yeah.
you guys feeling good about your characters right now?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So
I like the collaborative storytelling for building the world.
that was fun. I
Yeah.
thought that turned into something really cool.
Yes.
So, that being said, folks, that's where we're going to end it for today. As always, I do upload all these to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/TraderJody. If you are interested in this, like I said, for the month of December, every Wednesday we're going to be playing this game. And it should be a ton of fun. But again, we're all going to be kind of learning this system as we go. So if you're curious about how an actual Fabula Ultima game goes, this is a great way to kind of learn. Because you'll be learning with us. And we're going to make mistakes. And we're going to do things wrong, but we're going to learn. It's going to be cool and fun. I have yet to explain why there is a space on the overlay called clock. That will be a fun conversation to have. But I figure that is best explained when we are actually playing. So, otherwise, again, that's going to be all for me today. And I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.